All right, guys, as leather crafters, we have to learn to fall in love with saddle stitching, but sometimes we're just completely over it. So we're going to do this bag today. This is a Japanese-inspired lace bag, stitchless, glueless, super fun. The link to this pattern is down in the description. Go ahead and purchase it and build along with me. First up, you guys, we're going to go through all of our tools. On my left, as always, I have the essential tools. On my right, some of the optional ones. Obviously, every tool you acquire will just help you be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more precise. This bag you can do simply with a knife, a hole punch, straight edge, a hammer, and some tape to put your pattern to the leather. But here on the right, some optional tools that'll make things way easier is a 1-inch oblong punch, or a bag punch, some people say. And then this one here is a mini oblong punch. You can use the hole punch for all of the oblong punch holes. Just gonna look a little bit different. That's totally fine. A lot of people don't have these, but I think they look cool. So I included them in the pattern, but just know for every one of these holes, you can totally use one of the 5mm hole punches. And then I also have here just some things that help us cut out these circles. I'm actually gonna use dies for those because that way I get a perfect circle. But I'll show you how to do it without dies. And you essentially just need 2 circles that are where one is significantly bigger than the other. This is about 1.5 inches right here, and this one's about 1 inch. You just want the diameter of the bigger one to be at least 1/2 inch bigger than the smaller one, because the way that this bag closes is it wraps some leather right inside of there. So you just want it to be seated nice and deep so it doesn't come undone. So just remember that you want the diameter about 1/2 inch bigger. But you can use anything around your house. Use a cap to any kind of lid. Let's say any kind of lid, like for burnishing agent or glue or anything you have laying around the house. Maybe a milk carton cap. I don't know. Just play around with it. Find something that works. But it definitely helps to have a little bit of a template to cut around. So those are the essential tools. Today we're going to be using this leather right here. This is natural Butero, kind of. It's actually ghost leather, and I essentially buffed off the wax, which leaves like this slightly shinier Butero. It's kind of amazing. I had bought a bunch of ghost. It was too thick, but now I'm repurposing it, and I love the way that the other one that I already made turned out. So anyways, here we go. We'll get started taping the pattern to the leather. Okay, guys, we have our pattern laid out. So I designed this so that it's going to fit on 4 sheets of standard printer paper. So the way to print this correctly is you want to make sure it's set to print as tiles and that you're not scaling anything. Print as tiles and then auto center. That should put this black circle right in the middle here. Kind of got the 4 corners right here. And you're just going to be matching up all of those circles along with the lines. But first things first, you'll notice on this page, there's less of a margin. And on this page, there's more of a margin. So we're going to trim off all this margin here and then tape it over here. Same thing, bottom to top. So let's do that. Try and be as precise as possible in this step. You want to make sure that everything aligns perfectly. Okay, we got the margins on those cut. Now it's time to glue these or tape these together. I'm going to use some double-sided tape. I use it all the time in leather crafting. It's Tanner's Bond from Tandy. I just get it through Amazon. It works really well just to hold things in place temporarily, and it's gonna help us line everything up really easy. And this is actually a different brand. It's from the craft store. It's not nearly as strong, but it works in a pinch, and it'll work great for paper. Things aren't lining up perfectly. Like you see the P's here and the R isn't lining up, but then these lines line up. I imagine it's because printers don't have like perfect accuracy. You just want to make sure that the lines are lined up more than maybe the words or whatever, but Don't stress too hard as long as everything is pretty close. All right, once we have the 4 pieces together, we're just gonna trim out margins on the outside so we can tape the pattern to the leather. For that, you can totally just eyeball it, or you can use a straight edge. You want anywhere from like a 1/4 inch to, I don't know, 1/2 inch, doesn't really matter. You can set these off to the side for a second. One little tip for this part is you want to make sure that your leather is as flat as you can. If it comes in a roll, just roll it the opposite way and it should flatten it out a little bit. Just make this step a little bit easier. Typically, I'll put down a couple pieces, small pieces, just to hold everything kind of generally in place. And then I'll make sure I get all the borders. Keep in mind that wherever the tape is on the leather, it's gonna kind of mess up the finish. So just make sure you don't want to use this portion of that leather. And for that purpose, we're gonna cut out little sections for our buttons. Oh, one quick thing I forgot to mention is the buttons will actually work best if they're really thick leather. So if you have some like 10, 11 ounce laying around, make the buttons out of that. But you don't have to, it's just gonna help it maintain its shape a little bit better. So keep that in mind. And I definitely recommend a really firm vegetable tanned leather for this project. It wouldn't work that great out of something with a softer temper or chrome tanned. So 5 ounce and up to like maybe 7 for the main body, and then really thick for the buttons and the strapping. Okay, so there's the pattern tape to the leather. Now, like always, we want to punch all the holes. Oh, I missed the spot. We want to punch the holes before we trim the border. That way, the pattern is still stuck to the leather. So we don't have to like keep lining it up every time we want to punch a hole. So for this step, grab your 1-inch oblong punch. I will show you real quick how to do it without an oblong punch. All right, so if this is your pattern that you've put onto the leather, you just want to punch holes on both ends with your 5mm hole punch. And then all you're going to do is connect the two by going from the edge of the circle to the edge of the other circle. This is a great skill to have for like making belts and such. Just want to be careful that you don't catch the leather on the other side of the hole, which is really easy with a big knife like this. There you go. That was quick and not super precise, but you can go back through and kind of clean things up. Even sand in there or burnish it. But that's how you're going to make the holes if you don't have a bag punch. But this is super convenient for making belts. Definitely if you start to buy your punch, like after your first hole punches, I would then get this. I'd get it in like 3 sizes, a 1-inch, a 3/4, and maybe a 1/2 inch. But definitely start with the 1 because so many things are this size. All right, I had to switch out and put some granite underneath here. If you don't have like the sturdiest table, you'd be surprised. Sometimes you think that this is super, super dull, but really you just need something super solid to punch on top of because you're losing so much energy of the punch going through the leather in the table because it's like absorbing it and vibrating, and it's just really annoying. So if you throw some granite under there, or just a stump, if you have a stump laying around, that makes a great punching surface. So it just goes through effortlessly. All right guys, so we got those holes punched out. Now we're ready to cut. But before we do that, we're gonna cut out the corners with our hole punch. So right in here and here, it just makes those corners so much easier to cut out. if you pre-cut them with this 5mm hole punch. So you just put one right there, line up the edge of the 3 black lines, the one closest to me, and then the 2 sides. All right. And when we cut these lines, we're gonna avoid the curves for now. We're gonna go in and add all the radius. I'm not gonna make the radii joke every single time. It is radii, but it sounds pretentious, so I'm not gonna say it. We're gonna cut all the radiuses after we cut the straight lines. If you wanna be really precise when you're cutting lines, pick an edge of your line, because this line is about 1 mil. So you could have 1/2 mil of like inaccuracy. So either pick the inside of the line or the outside of the line. We're gonna pick the outside. And whenever you're cutting these from where these holes are, try and cut away from them. It'll just be easier. Cut towards you, which I know from Boy Scouts as well. You're always supposed to cut everything. Always cut towards you. Just kidding. That's not good advice. That's not true. I don't want to be held liable for anyone cutting themselves. But I feel like leathercraft and whittling, they're different. And I would know, I'm an Eagle Scout. It's okay if you lose this piece, because we're going to use something else for the corners. One thing to keep in mind is with the tape on here, the straight edge can be a little bit slippery. So make sure you have lots of pressure down on your straight edge. I've always mentioned, if you want to reuse this pattern, just tape this to cardstock, do this once, and then use a scratch-all or a leather gel pen, trace everything out on each piece instead of printing a bunch of paper and taping a bunch of stuff up. All right, there we have our rough cut. Now we'll go back through and add some corners. So again, grab whatever you have laying around. And you just line up this edge and this edge with 2 of those corners there, or sides of the, and then you do small little cuts. The smaller the cuts, the smoother your curve will be. Okay. And then for these ones, we can do the same thing with like a dime if we want. That's gonna be a little tedious, but you know how to do it. So I'm gonna cheat and use my corner punch. These aren't foolproof. Is that the way you say it? Foolproof? Fail-proof? I don't know. But you just want to make sure everything is nice and tight. But these aren't perfect 90 degrees. So you can use a hammer with them, or you can just kind of press them down like you're using a knife. And you can use whatever radius you want here. It can be way bigger if you want, or smaller, or not at all. The next step, totally optional. I'm assuming if you're into leathercraft even a little bit, you have an edge beveler and wood slicker. We are going to do that to ours. I didn't mention that in the optional tools section. But at this point, you get to do whatever you want to this. You could even tool this. You could paint it, you could do whatever you want. Oh, I forgot a corner. But we're gonna edge bevel, burnish, and I'll show you how to do that. So the key to edge beveling is making sure that you maintain a certain angle with your edge beveler. So it's about there. I'd say this, I don't know, piece of metal here is maybe from flat is maybe like 20 to 30 degrees. It depends on your edge beveler. Some, like the Berry King, they're like this. And so you have to keep a different angle. Just practice on some scrap. As long as you're feeling the friction of the blade cutting the leather, you know you're doing it right. This is just a number 1. I prefer a really subtle bevel. I think it looks much neater. But if you only have a 2 or 3, it'll still work. Just remember, the bigger the number, the thicker the leather it's used for. You can make a game out of it by trying to see how long of a piece you can do, but mine already broke, so. If you're looking for cheaper tools, I have to shout out Tandy Leather. A lot of you will have them locally. We actually go in and talk to leather crafters, talk to them. All the employees there typically do quite a bit of leather craft, and they're perfect entry-level tools, but still quality. With the Amazon ones, you're always going to be kind of gambling a little bit. But if they have good reviews, give them a try. All right. So we want to make sure we do the finished side and the flesh side. This is the flesh side. Other side was the finished side, if you didn't know. My editor just reminded me that I have a whole Amazon tool review video, if you want to check that out. Wasn't super impressed. It's definitely something you want to check out. And know that in that tool set video, it includes a lot of the best-selling Amazon tools. Even if they aren't in that set, they're going to be like the same ones from the same manufacturers and stuff. So check that out. Most of the things in the tool set did not get good reviews. I know it's a little bit more tedious to figure out all the tools you need to get instead of just buying one set. But maybe I should make a video about like the perfect entry-level set and link everything to buy. If you're interested in that, please comment. I'll make that video. All right, there we go. There's the main piece. Now we're gonna cut out the circles. I'm gonna show you how to do it by hand, but then I'm gonna cut mine out with a die. All right, so like I said before, the diameter of these doesn't have to be exactly that. That's just how I made the pattern. So I'm gonna use this. So I'm not even gonna trace it really. I'm just gonna start near a corner. And start to cut just like we did before with the radius on the bag. There's a circle. It's pretty good. And we can smooth out the edges with some sandpaper, and then we can burn it. We can bevel the edges and burnish the edges. But that's how you're gonna do it if you don't have it. And then if you're gonna use this pattern, so the big thing with these holes is that these 3 sets of holes just have to be they have to be lined up. They have to be spaced exactly the same because we're gonna thread some lacing through it. And the reason there's 2 of these is because we're gonna stack them so there's enough space for the lacing to go around the closure. So you can actually get a set of these circle dies. It comes with like 10 of them, just off Amazon. They're not that expensive. You don't have to have a press with them. You can put like a piece of wood on it and then just kind of hammer with your mallet. I don't know how durable they're gonna be over time, but they seem decently, like a decent quality, and they seem to work with my big press too. So we're gonna cut out 1 of the big ones and 2 of the small ones. If you're starting to get orders for things, because you're already selling, I was to make like one equipment recommendation, it'd be a press and dies. If you're making the same thing all the time, if you're making a bunch of custom stuff, it doesn't make sense. But if you're consistently producing 1 or 2 patterns all the time, get a press, get some dies. You can start with this smaller one right here, the master tool, and then you can upgrade to one of the bigger ones later down the line. All right, so if we've cut these circles out, then we just wanna cut one of our patterns out so we can figure out exactly where these holes are gonna go. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want to like mark where these holes are. You can use a scratch-all or a pen or even a pencil if you don't have any of those things. It's not a big deal. Just putting some temporary marks in there. All right, so the button assembly will go like this. We'll have 2 stacked up, and then this one goes on top. That way we can get our lace around there. All right, so this is what I was showing you before. This is that ghost leather with the wax on top. I'm gonna cut my straps. I'm gonna burnish that off or buff it off. So with the strap length, it's totally personal. I'm gonna cut these. I'm gonna cut 2 of them that are about 30-ish inches, maybe a little bit longer. Just keep in mind that you're gonna be running the strap up the bag a little bit and then figuring out how long you want them to be. So to be safe, cut them longer and then try it on and then cut them down to size after you've laced it up. If you have a strap cutter, definitely use it for this step. We're setting it to just under 1 inch because those holes are 1 inch and it'll just help lacing it be a little bit easier. But if you want to do it exactly 1 inch and have a really tight fit, you can do that too. And then just one key with the strap cutter, if you can see, you want contact with the leather and the tool here and here. And so you're kind of, with my left hand, I'm kind of pushing in and up, in meaning that way. So for the lace, it's gonna be going through these holes right here. You want it pretty much exactly the same size. So this is 5 millimeters. Doesn't have to be. If it's too big, it's gonna be annoying and it's gonna be too tight of a fit. If it's too loose, there's not gonna be enough tension for the bag closure to stay closed. So just try and match up this width with the width on your strap cutter. You can also buy a lace cutter that are different, but I don't have one of those. Maybe I should get one. That should be enough. 2 full lengths should be enough. One's for the closure and one's to kind of tie some of the strap parts together, but we'll stop it there. Probably won't be doing this step because you won't have ghost leather, but we're gonna cap off the ends of our straps. I like the look of a slightly oversized radius and then just making sure it's in the middle, punching off the end. You do want one strap a little bit longer than the other. The reason for this is where it attaches for the adjustment. You don't want that to be sitting right on top of your shoulder. You want that a little bit lower because it's not as comfortable up there. So in your pattern, you also have this. This is essentially just to space out the connection point up here. For inside the bag, we're gonna tie a little knot with some lace around the end, but that just requires 1 hole. This is more for spacing out adjustment because we're gonna have like a lace attachment here that's adjustable. You can put as many of these holes down here as you'd like. Before I do that, I'm just gonna bevel these edges real quick and then, all right. So we have our straps right here. Down on one end of each of them, we're going to punch 2 holes. We're gonna tie lace in here so that they don't come out of the lacing. These don't have to be precise. You can totally eyeball these. So all we're gonna do is lace a little bit of this through and then tie a knot. If you wet this leather too beforehand and then tie these knots, they like never come undone. They like set once they dry. But there's so much tension in the lacing, it really never comes undone anyway. Before we lace up the sides of the bag, we will put on the button. So like I mentioned before, we're gonna go 2 small ones and then the big one on top. That way, this lacing can set in there nice and easy. Technically, you could glue these together, but why? This is a glueless, stitchless bag. If you have a really strong leather, you can be pretty aggressive here. I know I said earlier I'm an Eagle Scout, but I forgot all the knots. I would do is that square knot? Like a legit square knot. And then just trim off the ends. If you're gonna sell this bag to somebody else, I would do the thing where you soak these in water and then set it, just to make it that much more durable. If you're gonna use it, you're a leather crafter. So if it comes undone, you just tie it again. You know what I mean? To make the process of lacing this up way easier, we're going to like pre-fold it a bit. And I'm gonna do a little bit of water for that. So basically just along this seam, this will just help me fold it. I set it with my hand, and then I just kind of burnish this edge to really set that fold. The reason I'm calling this Japanese style is just because of the closure, but I also feel like the lacing has kind of like a Japanese look to it. So when you're putting this together, I want to have, so the order is these little flaps are last. So these flaps go in side these front flaps, that way it's smooth going around, and then the side flaps come up like that. These are so useful in so many different parts of leathercraft. So anyways, that's what it should look like right there. And then this is going to be hard to film accurately, but from here it's pretty intuitive. You just start inside the bag on the bottom hole. The first few holes are the trickiest. Okay, so you can kind of go through these two sides and then lace it through this tab. But then with each hole, you want to pull all the way through. And then you can see on the inside there, that's why we have the little knot, just so that it can't slip out. So then we're just going in and out all the way up. At this point, you'll know you're doing it right. If you have this part coming outside here and then overlapping that. You don't want it to be the opposite, because then this would be kind of a little tab hanging down. And it actually finishes off on the inside of the bag. Like this. So there we go. There's one side. If you don't like this little bit of burnishing, obviously don't press as hard with the wood slicker. Again, double check that you have these flaps going in the outside of the back flap. All right, now we're all laced up. I'm gonna put in the closure lace right now. So the key here is you just wanna make sure you go in the right order of operations. You want it to be like this. So we're gonna go in the top holes on each side and out the bottom holes. And it can be a little tight in the beginning, because as you use it, the holes will kind of open up. I could even edge bevel this whole thing, and then it would make it slide through a little easier too. So this is a little tight, so I'm just gonna run it through a few times. All right, and then for these at the bottom, you can do whatever you want with them. My partner here, Sam, has really cool beads. So I'm gonna put some beads on it, tie a little knot. You can leave them as long as you want. You just wanna make sure you have enough so that if you're opening the bag, these aren't gonna like be too short, obviously. So we have these little beads. I'm not sure where Sam got them. I'm sure you guys are capable of sourcing some beads, but we're just putting them on. I'm just doing a simple knot there at the bottom. That looks about right to me. So if this were like a little longer, I mean, if there's a little longer, it could be a crossbody. You could just make it really short and have it just be a shoulder bag. Whatever you want. Yeah. So to do the adjustment, basically we're gonna have these 4 holes on the longer of the 2 straps, just one set of those 4. And then on the other, we're gonna put as many as we want for adjustment. I'll probably do like, I don't know, probably like 4 sets total. So then we have this on one side and this on the other. We're gonna line those holes up and then do a little lace. And then we have a little bit more adjustment if we want it. So to lace this up, you can do any kind of pattern you want. I like to do an X on the back side and then just 2 parallel lines on the front. And the way you do that is put each side in. Usually I have the X on the outside because I'm putting the knot on the inside of the bag, or I'm like attaching a strap to a bag, but I don't want the knot pressing into your body when you're carrying this. So then on the back, I'm just going across like that. And then same thing with the other side, just opposite corners. So then on the front, you just have this one parallel, and then we just tie it here. There we go. Super cute, Japanese inspired button bag. I'm obsessed, I love it. All right guys, there you have it, the Japanese inspired lace bag. If you want to support this channel, go ahead and pick up a pattern. We have a few other ones in the shop. I'm gonna be adding more all of the time. And that's the best way to make me produce more of this content, these build-alongs and tutorials, is to purchase the patterns. I try and make them super affordable. Please always comment down below any questions. I'm pretty good about responding to everybody. You can also find me on Reddit. I'm pretty active there. OpenSea Leather Co. is the user handle. So good luck making this bag, and please send me pictures when you finish it.